stand on the brink of a new chapter of our lives. It's only
This is
fair
me,
to take a moment
graduating
to
from high
reflect
school and
on
giving
what
the
we have
salutatory
become
speech
and
for my
what we are
class's
going to
graduation
become
ceremony.
together.
For most of my friends, graduation was a farewell to our carefree years as teenagers and a transition towards adulthood and college life. More importantly, it was the prologue to our grade 12 CBSE final examinations. Some were tensed about these exams, others were terrified, and the rest couldn't care less. I, on the other hand, was excited. Not because I liked giving grueling 3 hour long exams, but because it meant I could soon dedicate all my time to what I actually loved doing: programming. You see, in the months preceding my graduation, I began to jot down any random project ideas that I had so that I could build them once I was done with high school. These ideas ranged anywhere from building a neural network from scratch to making a fishing game where the fish catch the fisherman. You see how good at making ideas. The only issue was that these ideas just didn't excite me enough to get started. Every time I'd sit down to think about an idea from my list, I'd either think it wouldn't gain any traction or it was just plain stupid. The fish catch the fisherman. My standards for what constituted a good idea were simply too high. Fast forward a couple of weeks to when I joined this thing called Build Space. For those who don't know, Build Space is a home for people bringing their wildest ideas to life. It's a 6 week long summer program of sorts where thousands of people build whatever they want. It's completely free, and twice a week, their founder Farza conducts these live streams that nudge you in the right direction for whatever you're building without completely holding your hand. Anyway, this is one thing he said during the first lecture that really stuck with me.
Great ideas are forged, they are not found.
Let me explain what that means. So I've made a simple graph here with the x-axis representing time and the y-axis representing growth. I'm using growth in a very general sense here, so it could mean literally anything depending on your project. For the longest time, my mindset could be described in this way. So you're just going on about your day and suddenly an idea pops into your head. You take some time to explore the idea, wondering where it could go and what you could possibly make out of it. But after beyond this point of contemplation, your idea just sort of stays constant for the rest of time. And once that's done, you actually start beginning developing the actual thing, using your idea as a guiding light of sorts. And it can go quite far, but it's guaranteed to plateau at some point. This approach can work fine for some kinds of projects, but ultimately you have a really high chance of getting stuck in a dilemma right around this point, debating whether or not this idea is worthwhile. By the way, I'm using the blue marker as a representation of your idea's growth and the black marker as a representation of your actual tangible product's growth. What I inferred from Farza's lecture is that your ideas shouldn't be set in stone. They should evolve with your product. I'm going to start using red from now on to represent the idea because my blue marker ran out. So after that initial brainstorming phase, you want to show your idea to other people in a way that they can see or try out for themselves. And then you use that feedback to grow and iterate on your product and your idea. And then you use the feedback from that idea to develop your product even more. And then you use the feedback from that to develop your idea. And then you probably see where I'm going with this. You have a positive feedback loop where your ideas fuel your products and your products fuel your ideas. So your stuff keeps on evolving. I apologize if it's a little difficult to see because my red marker is also running out. I found that this mindset just lets you get started with your idea first and then worry about making it more appealing to your target audience later. It also makes taking feedback and criticism much easier because you're no longer worried about deviating from your initial dream. In fact, you are definitely going to deviate from what you want to what other people want from your product. With this in mind, let's go back a few months. On a pretty eventless Saturday in December of 2023, I went out to a specialty cafe with my parents. I saw these very strange sounding beverages called V60 and Chemex on their menu, so I asked the waitress and she told me these are kinds of filter coffee. I replied, "Oh, that sounds fun. I'll have a V60." Let me be real with you for a second. I had no idea what to expect. I assumed it was gonna be that South Indian filter coffee with a ton of milk and a pound of sugar thrown in for good measure. But why would such a fancy place serve a beverage that usually only Indian restaurants serve? And why would there be different types of it? But again, that was just the only filter coffee that I had ever heard of. So I kind of panicked internally when I saw the waitress put down a jug full of black coffee on our table. Regardless, I gave it a sip and said something along the lines of, "We need this at home." If you don't know what filter coffee is, it's a family of coffee makers where you mix ground coffee and hot water, let them sit there for a bit, then separate the coffee grounds from the water, and you have filter coffee. We got back home and realized that we already had a V60 at home. Turns out my brother regularly made pour overs at home without anyone actually knowing what coffee he was making. So that was even better. I already had most of the stuff at home to make a V60. Next, I went on YouTube and looked up a bunch of tutorials and recipes. I started watching videos from James Hoffman with his weird coffee science series and Tanner Colson with his espresso workflow shorts. Slowly but surely, my entire YouTube feed became coffee. I actually began brewing V60 coffee almost every single day. When I wasn't studying for my final exams, I was on YouTube watching videos about this recipe or that pouring technique or some weird science theory that might give you better tasting coffee. I was consuming a lot of coffee and coffee related content online. Despite this, I always just stuck to one brewing method. You see, when you're brewing a pour over coffee, you have to do these three things simultaneously: execute your pouring technique, keep an eye on your weighing scale to see how much water you're actually putting in, and finally, watch your timer to make sure you execute every step of the recipe on time. With enough practice, one can brew a recipe they're familiar with without consciously thinking about all three of these at the same time. I've been brewing the same recipe for months now and I barely pay attention to my timer anymore. In the first couple of times I try to brew a new recipe, though, I struggle to recall the steps and execute them on time while also looking at my timer and weighing scale and also sometimes trying to manage my pouring technique. The reason anyone won't even want to try out new recipes in the first place is because certain recipes can bring out certain flavor notes from your coffee. And it's quite common for newcomers in the coffee community to experiment with what they do and don't like. So I had the genius idea to make an app for this. The initial goal was to eliminate much of the mental overhead associated with the timer and figuring out your next action. If I had this problem, then surely someone else does too. However, I again thought this idea was just meh at best. It's a simple concept which I'd probably be able to build over a weekend and just throw away into the abyss of unfinished projects that is my GitHub profile. But powered with the knowledge and insights I gained from Farza's lecture, I decided to revisit the idea and just see where it goes. And I'm not kidding when I say this. I was just getting ideas upon ideas upon ideas of what else this app could be. I started to realize that this idea, much like many others in my list, had a lot of potential. I just had to look beneath the surface. I made a demo, slapped the name Drippr onto it, and showed it to the world. My goal for this app is to help anyone break into the incredibly convoluted world of coffee without feeling intimidated by its complex and experimental nature. One of the ways I'll try to do that is via this guided timer utility to help you learn new recipes quickly. There's a lot of other stuff in my idea backlog too, most of which I'm not even sure I'll ever implement. But it's better to have too many ideas than to have none at all. So, why am I even making devlogs in the first place? Well, it all boils down to the fact that I've been trying to raise awareness about my project, and one of the ways I'm going to try to do that is by documenting the technical processes behind developing and shipping an app like this. I've already tried farming other platforms for attention, but YouTube is the only place where the viewers seem to have even the remotest semblance of an attention span left. Besides, I've seen this strategy work for other indie projects. Basically, I'm trying to cultivate an audience of people that are either already enthusiastic about coffee, want to get into coffee but have no idea where to start, or face the same problem that inspired this app in the first place. This should hopefully create a feedback cycle which steers the ship in the right direction. And by creating technical content via devlogs, I'm also trying to attract developers with a crippling addiction to coffee. Well, why am I even making an episode 0? To serve as a prologue to this series and also give you all some context around my motivation for this idea. I also think that the journey of coming up with an idea is just as meaningful as that of building the idea itself. This is also my first time showing my work to the world in this way, so I'm not really sure how far this project is gonna get. But a wise man once said, "You miss all the shots you don't take." Unfortunately, I won't go much into the technical nitty-gritties in this video since I don't want to scare away the normies yet. But I promise I'll get into all that from the next video onwards. I also really wanted to release an early version of my app by the end of July, but I'm still 17, so I can't distribute my app yet, but I turn 18 in 2 months, so you can expect to get your hands on a pre-release version by the end of September or sometime in October. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button and join my app's waitlist to show me that you're interested. If you've reached this far into the video, I'm grateful that you've decided to tag along with me on this journey. I hope you're just as excited about code and coffee as me, because it's gonna be one HE double hockey stick of a ride.